All right, so this is your textbook, History and Film. It's the first edition. I've found no later edition, but it's written by a historian who's also worked a lot in films. So this will be good for those of you who really like films, and then those of you who avoid films. This will be your introduction to what a film is and that sort of thing. I know there's at least one person in here who avoids films. I won't mention his or her name. So anyway, this is on Google Books. This will not replace your, because you're going to have to end up buying the book. But anyway, I give it to you on here. Plus, I give you you can go to Amazon, you go to the bookstore. It doesn't really matter to me. You can get it digitally, however you want it. But I think you really do need it. We are going to go through and read it. A lot of the content will be introduced, reinforced by the textbook. I know some people get nervous about that, about textbooks. I understand it can get expensive. Here is a site called All Bookstores. If you've never used this site, I would recommend it to you. Again, I get no money if you use it or not. But allbookstores.com actually compares the prices of several book-selling sites all at once. Okay, so if you click on this, then it takes you to a little chart, which should come up if everything's working right. There we go. Is that it? Then here it'll tell you, see, eBay, Amazon, so on. So you can see you can get the book for a wide variety of prices. Lowest one's $18.99, but then you've got to pay shipping. So you got to watch all that. I'll leave that up. You look at the total cost over here on the side, $21.75. Ships in 2 days, but notice it takes 4 to 8 days to get there. So it's all things you got to balance. All right, good enough. Any questions about any of that? That's who I am. I teach history. Have a lot of interest in film. I think part of the reason this course sort of came about is that even though I teach history, most people never ask me about history. Well, they don't ask me about books. They don't come up and say, Dr. Weinle, have you read this latest book on this topic? They don't usually do that. But they do come up to me and say, hey, did you see this film? Is that film right? Is that what really happened? That kind of stuff. I get a lot of those questions. And of course, you could sort of take one view and say, you know what? I don't want to deal with all that. That stuff's not right. Just leave it alone. Forget it. We need like real stuff for our classes. Or you can use it as an opportunity because it introduces history to people. It at least gets them asking questions, gets them thinking about it. I can tell you, several years ago, I was teaching a course on ancient Egypt. And so I'm going through the course, and I ended up talking about religion in Egypt, ancient Egypt. And I mentioned the scarab beetle, the dung beetle, right? Which rolls the dung across the ground and buries it in the ground, and then from it emerges little baby dung beetles, right? And from that, the Egyptians then got the idea that the rolling of the dung was like the sun moving through the sky, and that life was coming from this dung, and so that somehow the beetle was connected with resurrection and all that kind of stuff. So I'm talking about that. And a guy says, are those the ones that eat up the body? The dung beetles eat up the body. And I said, well, no, dung beetles don't eat up the body. I just told you the dung beetle, it's just a beetle. And so anyway, he started talking about it, and he said, well, I saw that in a movie. So I watched the movie. What was the movie called? I think it was called Mummy. The Mummy, or The Mummy, yeah, one of those. And in it, they put a guy in like a sarcophagus, and then like, I don't know, 5,000 dung beetles go in and like eat him up alive, and they put the lid on it or something. Because I told them that people were buried with the beetles on them as an amulet. Anyway, that just gives you one example of the kind of questions I get from films. Okay, so we want to take a look at that in here. So you know how to operate this. I won't go through how to operate this right now. Any questions at this point? No. All right. Well, let's go then to our PowerPoint. So this is the course. This title is History Through Popular Culture. Then it has like a subheading, films, literature, forgot something else, I don't know, right? So let me ask you this. What is popular culture? You signed up for a class. What kind of class is this? How do you have any kind of idea or definition of what's popular culture as opposed to just, I don't know. We're going to talk about like high culture and stuff like that. What makes something popular? What is the definition of popular culture? I know it's the first day and you're like, what? We're not supposed to actually do anything. We're not supposed to talk. I didn't read. You don't have to read. I mean, you kind of know. You've all been exposed to popular culture. All right, maybe not Taylor, but the rest of you have been exposed. No, you have. You've been exposed to it. You know, how are you exposed to popular culture?
It's widely distributed.
Okay, widely distributed. And through what means today do we distribute our culture? The internet, sure, yeah, all kinds of social media, right? I see a lot of people walking around campus. Sometimes they'll say hi, they just don't even see you, right? Because they got those little ear things in without wires, so you can't really see them. And they got like something on the screen, and they're like walking between classes, and they are totally into that. I about ran a guy over in the parking lot because of that. I turned the corner of the parking lot, and this guy comes out between cars. He's like, "You didn't even see me. Didn't even see me." You know, so be careful, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It happens when you're driving, and it happens when you're walking. And then another guy darted out in front of me on a skateboard in the parking lot. So be careful of that too. That's just a public service announcement. Okay, so yeah, we can get it from the internet. What other ways do you get it? That's a big way today, though. Music, yeah. They used to have a thing called a radio. People used to get pop. People don't listen much to the radio today. Radio, television, right? Now we just call them screens, right? Any kind of screen, iPad, iPhone, television, computer monitor, you know. Right. But yes, music. Music is a big one. Music is a big one. Popular stories. You know, if we think a little bit further back, a lot of times things were transferred from person to person by storytelling. And that just sort of migrates across different, because really a lot of it is a story, right? We're telling a story, and it migrates across a platform of how we receive that story. Okay, we're going to take a look then at history through popular culture. So this class, you know, I've got a picture of Uncle Mel over here. You may know this film, all right? Braveheart. Now, Braveheart, of course, if you know anything about a guy named William Wallace, if you ever heard that name, chances are you know it because of this film, Braveheart. And chances are most people haven't read any books about William Wallace or, you know, much else. But the interest in William Wallace came when Mel Gibson made this movie. So here is Mel Gibson. I like this picture because it, you know, you sort of get the idea that you're watching history. But here's Mel Gibson with all the cameras and with a megaphone. He's the director as well as, of course, the star of the film. And what that means then is that when we watch a film, let's say, or we listen to a podcast, or whatever it is that we're doing where we're getting information, entertainment, that sort of thing. It's being interpreted. Mel Gibson is interpreting William Wallace. So is Braveheart a historical document? Is there anything about it historical? Well, that's the kind of questions we're going to take a look at in this class. And certainly there was a guy named William Wallace. Yes, and he did fight battles, and he was in Scotland. And a lot of things, there are basic things about it that are true. Now, of course, when you're making a film, there are a lot of details that you need in the film that you don't really have, and you sort of put them in there. But part of that brings an interpretation. So we want to try then to understand how popular culture, recording, films, understanding history, how does it affect our view of history? And does that correspond with reality of what actually happened? And then some people might say, well, what's the difference? Who cares? I like William Wallace the way he was in this film. I don't want to know about the real guy. I like this guy. He's a hero, and he was brave, heart, right? And that's the way I like him. But part of what I hope we can do is that we can start to say, okay, here are these images that we have, and we can begin to distinguish between what is there presented and then what actually happened. What this really then involves in, a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to take that class because I'm going to watch a bunch of films and that'll be cool and fun. And, I don't have to really do any work. Well, hopefully you'll have fun. But I want you to watch the films in a different way. You might say, I'm going to wreck the film for you. But I'm not, I hope not. But what I'm saying is that when you sit down and watch Braveheart or some film like that, you sort of have an expectation. Yeah, you kind of get into the film. There's going to be battles and there's going to be all this stuff that's going on. But I want us to take a look at it and analyze it maybe in a different way than you never have before. Maybe you have, I don't know. But I want you to look at it from a sort of historical point of view. Because the people that you meet, if you tell them you had a class like this, or if you tell them, if you just discuss with people different films, they're going to bring up the thing, and that's going to be their idea. Whether the film's about Abraham Lincoln, or William Wallace, or the Civil War, or World War II, or whatever it might be, they're going to people tend to basically really be influenced by the things they see in a film. And the question is, how much of that is factual? How much of it is romanticized? How much of it is perhaps propaganda? How much of it is sort of historical revisionism? They want a new spin on it. And then the third thing we've got here is historiography. Now, I know several of you are history majors. I don't know how many now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe about half of you are history majors, right? You probably had a course on historiography, right? With someone else, not me. And so what is historiography? What's that? Writing history? Yeah. Well, yeah, it's sort of the history of history, or the study of history. There are different schools of thought. There's different ways of approaching history, different ways of interpreting history. Because even the historian has personal perspective, right? You might call it bias or whatever. So historiography, so that we can start to get sort of examples of historiography on the popular level. We can also sort of pick up by looking at these films. Learning how to analyze and question what you're seeing and reading. And by the way, this class is not just going to be film. You need to read 2 books of your choice, and we'll kind of get to the mechanics of it later. But there will be 2 things. Now, those they have to be sort of historical novels, graphic novels. Could be something you've already read, but I would want you to look at it in a different way. Okay, and we'll have a list of those. I got some of the list up here. All right, let's keep going. So part of what we're talking about here with popular culture is the difference between high culture and low culture, or folk culture, it's sometimes called. Can you give me an example of high culture? An event, an activity, or whatever, anything. A cotillion. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. I, I didn't know you had ever participated in that, but yes, you have not. Okay. Anyone here ever participated in a cotillion? Does everybody know what that is? Why don't you tell them what that is?
I really don't know.
You don't know? Does anybody know what that is?
Rich people to show off their money, really.
Okay.
And everyone just like, they learn about like class and like manners and stuff like that. And they go and have like a ball. And like everyone dresses in like tuxedos and the girls in white gowns. And they like do formal dances.
All right. Yeah, you had a lot of important elements there. First part you said is for rich people. And so this is really the key. High culture has always been for the rich, all right, the wealthy, the educated. And they have their own kind of dancing. They have their own sort of party. They have their own kind of culture or events. And this started way back. I mean, it used to be, you didn't have a little device you could carry around with you everywhere, and it would entertain you and do whatever you want, play music for you, play videos for you, all that. You would have that sort of thing only in a large public arena, like, say, an opera. An opera is pretty much high culture, most of them. Symphonies, things like that. You go and hear this kind of music, live music, in a big music hall or theater, or in your home. You could have a private event, all right, with your private entertainment. You would hire someone to come to basically entertain your guests. That could be music. It could be, in France, in the time of before the French Revolution, they would have philosophers, philosophes come, and they would give a talk, and it would start conversation. And oh, it was so lovely for us, wasn't it? A lovely evening was had by all, right? That's high culture. You're right. It has to do with the wealthy and the kinds of things the wealthy would do that the poor people don't do. Now, it doesn't mean the poor people don't have culture. They just don't have that kind of culture. But what I'm saying is, there was a time, and that time is not now, that there was a kind of high culture and then a folk culture. What that's really been replaced by, for the most part, is pop culture. Pop culture. Let's put this next one up here. So here you see a nice formal dance. Could be for a cotillion or some formal event up there on the left for the wealthy. Notice how they're dressed. Notice they're doing their particular dances, and they're bowing and they're doing their kind of thing. And then look at these people down in here on the right. They're dancing. That's a different kind of dancing, different kind of music. Who's having more fun? Well, I guess it depends on who you're talking to, but that's what I'm talking about, folk culture. It doesn't mean that poorer people, people that aren't in the upper crust, do not have music and dance and culture. They just have a different kind. And those two things don't really meet for a long time. High and low culture. Here's your event. This is something even Taylor has probably heard of. There's a movie called Titanic. It's got a woman in it called Rose. Remember Rose? Anybody? How many people have seen the movie Titanic? Everyone? You haven't seen Titanic? You haven't seen? Okay. Well, it's about a ship. Okay. People wanted me to go see it. I did go see it. I said, I think I know how it ends. It's not a mystery. Anyway, yeah, there's a woman named Rose. She's the main, character, right? And then a guy named Jack, right? His name is Jack. And so he's the other main character. But he's a poor guy, Even on the ship, he's like down in the whatever lower decks, right? And she's up in the upper decks. And she goes to all these fancy dances and wears all the fancy dresses and has the fancy meals. And she's there with other, I don't know if it's her parents or anyway. And basically there's this guy all picked out for her, and he's rich as well. But of course, I don't want to spoil the movie for you. Of course, it's been like 20 some years if you haven't seen it yet. The ship sinks. Okay, sorry, didn't want spoiler alert. But of course, she falls for the guy that's the wrong guy, right? Not supposed to go. This is the poor guy. This is the guy down in the lower decks. You know, he's not supposed to even really be talking to her, but of course, they do. All right, all right. I just got back from a cruise where I was speaking on the cruise. Believe it or not, I spoke, and people came voluntarily. They weren't even forced. Hundreds of them. Can you believe that? I can't, but they did. Anyway, it's interesting for me because when I go on this cruise, especially this time, I'm with the crew. I stay back like in this other part of the ship that's not fancy at all, right? And then you go out into this other stuff where everything's carpeted and everything's, everybody is like, oh, yes, may I help you, sir, and all this kind of stuff, right? That's what people pay for to go on a cruise. But then I kind of go back with the crew, and I got my little tiny room with bunk beds and no window. And then I leave that. I have to get like dressed up to go speak. And then, I walk from that and I walk out into the other area. So you can see a real distinction between, in there still, the crew and the passengers. All right, passengers are paying a lot of money to be there. The crew's getting paid to be there, not a lot of money. All right, so that's what it was, a cruise. They were sailing from England, Ireland, over to New York. Well, they were supposed to. It sunk. And so Rose, so if you imagine, if you have that image, the kind of stuff Rose was doing, the kind of stuff Jack was doing on the ship. There's high culture, low culture. How about a violin versus a fiddle? Same instrument, right? Played in two very different styles and ways. Somebody, you're probably not going to go to Symphony Hall and hear anybody fiddle. But you could, you will hear them playing in a certain style there. Now, maybe some people can play both, but basically there's two separate things. Ballet versus square dancing. They still make people square dance in school. They probably don't make you do that anymore, right? When I was in school, they would force everyone to square dance. I think it was about 4th grade. It was elementary school. I don't remember the grade. It seemed like it lasted for several years, but it probably was just 1 year. They would take us all in. Our cafeteria was sort of our gym. They would, I don't know, they moved all the tables out of the way, and then they would make you stand there, and you were supposed to go square dance in the gym. That was like PE class, part of it. Well, anyway. Well, those are two very different kinds of dance. And historically, you either enjoyed and participated in one, but not in the other. The two did not mix. Pop culture has changed all of that, right? We now have shows, movies, music, right, that people know. And everybody, the wealthy watch Game of Thrones. The poor watch Game of Thrones. If they get access, if they can steal HBO from by hacking in through somebody's account, but they find a way to watch a Game of Thrones. A lot of people, I don't know how many people have watched Game of Thrones. Millions and millions of people, both wealthy and poor and middle class, all the way through. And so you can make references to Game of Thrones, to a character or something, to an event that happened, and a whole lot of people are going to understand what you're talking about, no matter where they're from, even from different countries and different economic levels, right? Or, of course, this guy in the middle, Kanye, and he's everywhere, right? He's everywhere, Kanye. Now he's like going to churches and stuff, preaching. With Joel Osteen, I think is I heard. That's the last thing I heard that he did. I'm sure he's been up to stuff since then. But Kanye, a lot of people know Kanye. I know who Kanye is. You probably know who Kanye is. What are the chances? We both know about it. All right. How about you're probably Swifties. Is that what they call them? Swifty? Not Swifters. That's a thing I have that you use to sweep the floor. It's a Swifter. But a Swiftie is a fan of Taylor Swift, right? And then, of course, you got all these other characters there in that bottom right. Then you got the whole Marvel thing, right? Captain America, Iron Man, all that stuff. American Idol. Okay, and the list could go on with music, television, movies. But my point here is that popular culture is now the norm. You know, I'm not saying there's no high culture left, that there aren't any operas and things. In fact, believe it or not, I'm going to be in an opera. What? I'll just throw that out there. No, but it's a week from Saturday, I think it is. So you are invited, but you got to pay. I don't have any free tickets. La Boheme. Right? So you might say, well, that's pretty highfalutin for a guy like me. Yeah, it is. But, you know, I'm not saying those things aren't around. There are symphonies and operas and cotillions that still go on. But by and large, those are not the dominant things in our culture. Pop culture is. Okay? So let's take a look at that just for a second. Popular culture, the way I guess I'm defining it, began probably in the late 19th century with the rise of mass media, like newspapers. Those probably the first thing where people started to share amusements, share things. You know, how about cartoons? That was the best part of newspapers. Was the cartoons, right? Peanuts and stuff like that. And so everybody, you make a reference to Charlie Brown. Even still today, most people know who Charlie Brown is. I like to think of him still being alive, and or Snoopy or something like that. People know about that. Why? Because it's in the popular culture. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, a lot of people know about those cartoons and those characters. And that started with mass media. They would put these cartoons in there, and people would watch them. People started to share the same amusements, you might say, even sometimes, and then also recordings of music began, right around the turn of the century. And then, of course, we have the wireless, right? The radio that comes in, and now a whole new way of receiving information and entertainment right in your home, right? If you can buy any kind of a radio, and most people did, then people would, just like people today, sit around and, whatever they do, sit around and look at their screens together or something, I don't know. But people used to sit in a room and have a radio in there, and they look at the radio, and they would do their stuff, they just talk and whatever. They sit there in a rocking chair, sit there in another chair, a comfortable chair, and listen to radio programs. And a lot of people did that. And so they all became familiar with these different characters and these different singers and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, films. And films are what we're going to really talk about, are also beginning the late 19th century, but really early 20th century, through silent films, all the way up to talking motion pictures, as they were called, and then, in color and widescreen and all that kind of stuff. Television, of course, comes in the 1950s primarily, becomes popular, gives film a real challenge. So film has to change to meet the demand of television audiences, give them some reason to leave the house. And of course, films have to do that again today because a lot of people have stopped going to movie theaters, and so they have to try to create a way to get you in there, right? Through trying to give you an experience in the movie theater today that you can't have looking at your iPhone sitting on a bus, right? So why should I go and see this? Well, big spectacular films, 3D kind of things, giant screens, all that sort of thing. All right, one other thing we want to talk about here, and that is academic history versus popular history. We talked about culture, but now this. What kinds of, you see this guy on the left, this is your stereotypical professor type, right? Sitting in an office with cheap shelves and a lot of books, reading a little book there, right? Wearing a tweed jacket. I mean, this guy is like your, all right. Now, who is it that reads academic history? Do you read much academic history? I mean, if you're history majors, you've been assigned a few books, right? Hopefully you've read them. I won't ask you for a show of hands. You were supposed to read them. But I mean, if you were getting ready to go on vacation out to the beach, like this lady is here on the right, are you going to grab probably a big academic book and take it to read on the beach about history? Maybe not, right? You probably would grab a historical novel, maybe, if you like that sort of thing. Maybe with a little romance in there. Maybe the guy's a hero and there's a woman and there's a love triangle. You know, I don't know. I don't write that stuff. I don't really read that stuff. But I'm just saying, that's what I mean by popular history versus academic history. It's not just that we say, well, this is the #1 Times bestseller book and it happens to be an academic book. But I'm talking about audience. What do I mean by that? Audience. Yeah, the people that, well, if you're going to speak or you're going to write or if you're making a film or any kind of thing like that, one of the main things you got to have in your mind, I think, is your audience. Who is it that you intend this to be? Who is the intended audience? For example, I told you I went on these cruise ships, right? And I've done that. This is probably my 7th or 8th cruise that I've spoken on. What they want is infotainment. I don't know if they call it that exact word, but that's what they want. They want some information, people on vacation, they want to hear a little something, maybe learn a little something. They don't want it to be too heavy. They don't want it to be really political. They want it to be entertaining. They want it to have a PowerPoint. They want it to have, I had some people came to every one of my talks. Last day I said, how many people been to all of them? There's probably 100 people that came to every single one of my talks, my 6 or 7 talks. Infotainment, but you have to know your audience. The way I would speak on the cruise boat to cruisers, or whatever you want to call them, cruisiacs, I don't do it in the same way that I do, say, in a classroom here. Maybe you think I should. Maybe I have to get more people in my class. But anyway, or if I go to an academic conference and I'm speaking, which I've done, give papers, give a presentation at an academic conference, that's a different audience than, say, students. That's a different audience than, say, people on a cruise boat. You've got to know your audience. And mostly academic historians, academic people, write and present for other academic people. Right? They're not attempting to get a mass market. They're not attempting to have a popular history. Now, there are some historians who have sort of crossed over, began to write very popular history. They're usually heavily criticized by their peers and come under criticism. Why? Because they get famous. Because they make a lot of money on it, usually, if they're successful, and people maybe get jealous of it. But it's also the fact that they say, well, that's kind of sloppy research. There's no footnotes. There's no documentation. They're kind of playing a little bit easy with all this stuff and kind of putting everything in this sort of kind of prose that's going to sell. Okay. So, audience, writers, entertainers versus scholars. This doesn't mean it's good versus bad. There can be good academic writing. There can be bad academic writing. There can be good popular writing. There can be bad popular writing. There can be good popular history. There can be bad popular history. You won't believe how many people on these cruise ships ask me about aliens. I don't mean people coming from another country. I mean people coming from another planet. I get more questions about aliens than probably anything else on cruise ships. Why? I don't know. But you see, I'm not supposed to say, well, you're just crazy, man. This, I can't say that because, it's infotainment. I said, oh, well, I know several people have mentioned that kind of thing, yes. I had a guy who he believed that the pyramids, were built by aliens, things like that. That anything that was sort of hard to understand had been made by aliens. Actually, as I was leaving the cruise ship, as I was going through somebody recognized me. I was even, what was it? I was getting on the airplane and a guy recognized me and came up to me and said, all right, tell me. You can just tell me now because no one else is around. Do you think that, there were people here before we got here? That was his way of saying, did I think that aliens, once? I said no. He was very disappointed when I said no. He goes, oh. He goes, well, I do. Okay. But look at the History Channel. What's on the History Channel? I remember when the History Channel started, I had high hopes. Oh, this is going to be great. We're going to have like history 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You're going to be able to turn on the History Channel and you'll be able to watch informative documentaries about history and programs. And, now what it is? It's Bigfoot. It's Ancient Aliens. It's, by the way, I'm going to have you watch a little bit of Ancient Aliens just to analyze it. It's all kinds of stuff you might not imagine you would ever do for class that I will ask you to do. Well, anyway. So, it's not good versus bad. Now, we've got what? We've got about 7 minutes left. So let me see if you have any questions about this. It's just kind of introduction. What have you gotten yourself into? Well, we're going to be talking about popular culture. We want to do that, and we want to analyze it from a historical point of view. That's sort of the twist. Popular culture that we will focus on are films, but also... so anyway, this will be the kind of things that we will take a look at. All right, so let us then move away from this. And let's go back to this. I have on here for you a list. This is for our first assignments. And it is mass media, folklore, poetry, ballads, and popular songs. This would actually be our first thing. That's not due for a few weeks yet. But the thing that you need to do is you need to begin to sign up for this kind of thing. So, and you can do that at any time. You can do it today if you really are motivated. But it's basically the idea here is there's only one book, one movie per person. So in other words, I don't want all of you to watch Braveheart and then analyze Braveheart or something like that. Things that we're not going to do, we're not going to watch movies in this class. What? It's a perfect class to watch movies in, I know. But basically that's going to be your assignment. We're meeting on Mondays and Wednesdays. We don't meet on Fridays, as we should, some people might say, because this is a hybrid class. So that means that every Friday at this time, 9 o'clock, I'm sure you'll be up working on this class. Yeah, probably not. But anyway, at least that time you should spend on this, and then others. So there you watch the movies on your own. Okay, you'd watch the movies on your own. And it's up to you, if you sign up for a film, to find that film. I mean, I can't guarantee you're going to have access to it. So what that probably means is when you look at the list of films, you should, at the same time, be figuring out how you're going to get access to that film. Our library has a lot of DVDs. I don't know how current they are. I'm not sure what all they all are. Certainly you could watch those. How many people in here have access to Netflix? Looks like everybody. Everybody? If not, of course, you can get like 30 days for free. But if you have Netflix, okay, now you've got a whole And who knows? I don't know how many films are on Netflix. So you could check that. And maybe Amazon Prime. A lot of people have that. How many people have Amazon Prime? Most people, not everybody. Okay, so Amazon Prime and Netflix are two good ways to get access to these films. There are other ways. For example, there's something called Google Play. I don't know if you run into that. There's also on YouTube a pay option for a lot of films on YouTube. Got to be careful with YouTube. Make sure that you're not pressing on a link that takes you to somewhere else on all these things. Like if you go to YouTube and you find something, or you go to Google Play, I'm trying to think of some of the other. There are other things like that where you have to pay like $2.99 or $3.99 to watch something. Okay, so it's like on-demand payment. There's Redbox. Everybody heard of that? Redbox things around. You know, where you get a DVD for, you know, a couple dollars. You can watch it that way. So I leave it up to you to find out how you're going to do that. Keep that in mind as you choose. So as you choose your films, you will then sign up for them. Let's see. I've got a list on here somewhere. But anyway, just a blank list with your names. And then as you tell me what film or book you want to do, you pick it by, as we're going to go through, you're going to have, we're going to have documentaries. We're going to have things on biographies. We're going to have a section called costume drama kind of things, which are historical sort of movies that way. War movies, U.S. history movies, and so forth. So we've got 10 categories of things that you're going to be doing. And we are going to have a list for you. I'll have a list for you in each one of those things. I'll post them. I'll be posting more as we go through. You go through and pick it. Let me know. I'll put you on the list. That's your movie. That's your book. 2 books out of those 10 things. Those could be graphic novels. Yes?
Pretty much in place of what you normally have for video assignments.
There will be a video assignment. Yeah, here's the way the course is going to work. You're going to have 10 things that you write which have to do with these assignments, these 10 things, that you watch a movie or read a book, and I'll have the criteria. We'll talk more about it next week. And then there will be 10 video assignments where there'll be other sort of little lectures and also some video clips giving you examples of different kinds of things like that, okay? So look it over. If you have any questions, send me an email, and I can try to help you out. We'll talk more about it next time. So keep watching.